reality and make you easier to control. It's not about miscommunication. It's strategic miscommunication. It's keeping you mentally off balance, just enough to make you question yourself and rely on them for clarity. The manipulator might tell you one thing and then act in a completely opposite way. They might praise you, then criticize you seconds later. They rewrite past conversations. They contradict themselves and deny it. They give vague answers, speak in riddles, or shift the subject when you're close to the truth. You're left chasing meaning, trying to decipher what was real and what was manipulation. And that's the trap. While you're busy trying to decode the confusion, you stop noticing the control. This tactic works because the human brain craves coherence. When something doesn't add up, our minds automatically try to resolve the contradiction. We blame ourselves first. Did I hear it wrong? Did I overreact? Did I forget something? And that doubt makes us vulnerable. The manipulator becomes the only stable source in the fog of confusion, except they're the one who created the fog to begin with. Controlled confusion is used in abusive relationships, toxic workplaces, cults, and even high-pressure sales tactics. It's how abusers maintain dominance without ever needing to scream or threaten. They use cognitive overload to exhaust you into compliance. You stop fighting because you're too tired to make sense of anything. You start agreeing just to make the mental chaos stop. It becomes harder to trust your instincts. You hesitate before asking questions because you fear being shamed, mocked, or spun into another web of contradictions. You begin to rely on them to interpret reality for you. And that's when they've won. Because when someone can define what's real for you, they don't just influence your decisions, they own your mind. Controlled confusion is not loud. It's not obvious. It's the soft, constant erosion of certainty. And by the time you realize how twisted the world has become, you're no longer sure whether to trust your memory, your feelings, or even your own truth. Because every time you tried, it convinced you it was wrong. Identity undermining identity. Undermining is a deeply insidious manipulation tactic that doesn't just aim to hurt, it aims to erase. It's the slow, deliberate process of chipping away at someone's sense of self until they no longer recognize who they are without the approval, control, or validation of the manipulator. This isn't just emotional abuse, it's psychological rewriting. At first, it's subtle. Little comments about your personality, your habits, your appearance, your dreams. You're so dramatic. You always overthink everything. You're not really the creative type. You think you're better than everyone, don't you? These words don't land as insults. They're disguised as concern, jokes, or feedback. But they're surgical, targeted, and when repeated over time, they begin to stick. You start questioning yourself. You pull back from the things that once gave you joy. You hesitate before speaking, dressing a certain way, setting goals. You silence parts of yourself, not because you want to, but because something made you feel like those parts were wrong. Too much, not enough, embarrassing, flawed. This is identity undermining. When someone deconstructs your sense of worth piece by piece until your confidence isn't just damaged, it's dependent on their opinion. You begin to seek their permission to exist as yourself. You ask if your feelings are valid. You defer to their judgment, even on things you once knew with certainty. And the more you comply, the smaller you become. What makes this tactic so dangerous is its invisibility. It doesn't come with screaming or slamming doors. It comes with quiet correction, constant truth-telling, a mirror that only reflects your flaws. And every time you try to reclaim a part of yourself, they push back. You've changed. This isn't you. Where's the person I fell in love with? The irony is, they're the one who changed you. They broke you down and then blamed you for not being whole. Over time, your identity becomes so enmeshed with their approval that being yourself feels like betrayal. And that's when they've won. Not by controlling your actions, but by making you forget that you ever had the right to choose who you are. You don't just lose confidence, you lose you. Victim
To je to.
playing is a
Misija
deeply
riješena.
manipulative psychological tactic where someone pretends to be the wronged or wounded party, not out of genuine suffering, but as a way to deflect accountability, gain sympathy, and seize control of a situation. It is not vulnerability. It is weaponized.
Drop.
It works because it hijacks one of our strongest instincts.
Drop.
desire to protect those who are in pain. At first, it's
So fun. So fun.
the manipulator comes across as hurt, misunderstood, or mistreated. They cry, sulk, or retreat. They say things like, I guess I'm always the bad guy, or I try so hard and it's never enough. Their voice cracks, their eyes water, but underneath the performance is a sharp, calculated goal to flip the power dynamics.
No, izgori.
Apologizing, comforting, and backing down, even if they were the one who crossed the line. The genius of victim playing lies in how it reframes the entire narrative. Suddenly, their betrayal becomes your insensitivity. Their aggression becomes a reaction to being hurt. Their manipulation is rebranded as self-defense. And the more empathetic you are, the easier you are to trap, because your compassion becomes the leash they pull on. In relationships, this tactic makes you feel like the villain for having boundaries. If you confront them, they act crushed. If you ask for change, they accuse you of being
Da li ćeš ti
demanding.
imati vremena da to
Over
pokupiš,
time,
predaš?
you begin censoring yourself just to avoid hurting them. You tiptoe around the truth, give more than you should, and apologize for pain and good cause.
Bome ne.
And the most
Znači, win i win.
dangerous part, it works even when you know it's manipulation, because guilt doesn't respond to logic. Watching someone crumble in front of you triggers the primal urge to fix, to soothe, to make it okay. The manipulator knows this. That's why they reach for tears instead of honesty. That's why they rehearse hurt instead of admitting fault. They don't need to be right. They just need to be pitied, because pity disarms. It silences anger, confuses accountability, and keeps you emotionally handcuffed to someone who will hurt you, then cry about it when you try to leave. False consensus trick. The false consensus trick is a subtle but powerful psychological manipulation that works by making you believe that everyone agrees with the manipulator, everyone but you. It's designed to isolate, pressure, and mentally corner you into compliance by creating the illusion that your thoughts, feelings, or boundaries are not just wrong, they're abnormal. And when you feel like the outlier in a crowd, your instinct is to doubt yourself, not the crowd. This trick doesn't need facts, it needs suggestion. Everyone thinks you're being too sensitive. Most people would have let it go by now. Honestly, you're the only one who sees it that way. These phrases are seeds planted in your mind. They tell you, you're alone in this, you're overreacting, you're the problem. And when someone you care about, especially a partner, a parent, a friend, uses this language, it hits harder. You don't just feel misunderstood, you feel defective. The false consensus trick preys on one of the deepest human fears, being rejected by the tribe. We are wired for social survival, which means we instinctively want to belong. So when someone makes us feel like our opinion is out of sync with what everyone else believes, we start shrinking. We silence ourselves. We second guess our instincts. We conform, not because we're convinced, but because we're afraid to be wrong alone. Manipulators use this tactic to avoid accountability. If you challenge them, they don't argue the truth. They weaponize public opinion, even if they have no evidence of it. They create invisible armies of approval behind them and make you feel like you're up against all of them. They might even reference imaginary others, friends, exes, co-workers who allegedly agree with their perspective. But those people never show up. They never speak because they may not exist. What makes this trick so effective is its subtle cruelty. It doesn't directly attack you. It turns the entire world against you in your mind. And once you start believing that your voice is the only dissenting one, you stop using it. It's not about changing your mind. It's about isolating your truth until it feels like madness. Deliberate misinterpretation. Deliberate misinterpretation is a manipulation tactic where someone intentionally twists your words, intentions, or actions into something entirely different, usually negative, so they can gain control, derail the conversation, or place blame onto you. It's psychological sabotage disguised as misunderstanding, and the more you try to clarify, the deeper you sink into their trap. It often begins with a simple statement. You express a boundary, you voice discomfort, you share a concern, but instead of engaging with what you actually said, the manipulator responds to a distorted version of it. You say, I felt hurt when you ignored me, and they reply, so now I'm a terrible person who can't do anything right? You say, I need some time to think, and they accuse you of abandonment. They don't respond to you, they respond to the straw man they've created and then punish you for it. This tactic is especially effective because it forces you onto the defensive. You find yourself explaining, rephrasing, apologizing for a meaning you never intended. But every attempt to clarify only gives them more material to twist. They don't want to understand you. They want to control the narrative. And by misinterpreting your words, they turn you into the aggressor and themselves into the victim. Deliberate misinterpretation is common in emotionally abusive relationships, where communication becomes a minefield. You start speaking in measured, filtered sentences, terrified of being misunderstood. You begin internalizing their false interpretations, thinking, maybe I wasn't clear, maybe I did sound angry, maybe it is my fault. But that confusion isn't accidental, it's engineered. The manipulator uses this tactic to avoid accountability. If they can misinterpret your feelings as attacks, then they don't have to face their behavior. If they can make your vulnerability look like manipulation, then they don't have to show empathy. They weaponize language itself, turning every word into a potential liability. Over time, you may stop speaking up altogether. The emotional cost becomes too high. You silence yourself not because you're wrong, but because being right never matters. Not when your words are constantly twisted into weapons against you. And that's exactly where they want you. Quiet, unsure, and easier to control. Anchoring negative emotions. Anchoring negative emotions is a manipulative, psychological tactic that programs someone to associate specific people, places, phrases, or behaviors with emotional pain, so that even neutral or innocent situations begin to feel threatening. It's psychological conditioning at its most invasive. It doesn't just influence your choices, it rewires your emotional reflexes, and over time, you'll start reacting with anxiety, shame, or fear, not because of what's happening, but because of what you've been trained to feel. The manipulator creates emotional anchors by pairing ordinary moments with moments of distress. They might humiliate you right after you express joy. They might start a fight every time you go out with friends. They might go cold every time you succeed at something. Eventually, your nervous system makes the connection. Happiness equals punishment. Success equals conflict. Speaking up equals silence. Without realizing it, you begin avoiding the very things that once made you feel alive. That's how anchoring works. It doesn't need logic, it only needs repetition. The more often a negative emotion is paired with a specific trigger, the stronger the emotional anchor becomes. A phrase like, "we need to talk," starts making your stomach drop. A certain tone of voice makes your hands sweat. Even a room in your home becomes something you dread. And soon, the manipulator doesn't even have to do anything. Your body responds to the anchors on autopilot. This tactic is especially sinister because it bypasses rational thinking. You can tell yourself that you're safe, that you have nothing to feel guilty about, but your body still flinches. The emotional associations have already been forged, and the more you respond with fear, silence, or compliance, the deeper those anchors sink. It's a slow erasure of emotional freedom. The manipulator now has control without ever needing to raise their voice. They've trained you like a dog with invisible electric fences. You avoid behaviors not because you can't do them, but because you dread what happens when you do. You start living smaller. You start doubting the places, people, and parts of yourself that once brought joy. And that's the real goal of anchoring negative emotions, not just to control what you do, but to make you afraid to be who you are. Ingratiation is a psychological manipulation tactic that hides domination behind the mask of charm. It's the calculated use of flattery, helpfulness, and apparent admiration to lower your defenses, win your trust, and make you feel valued, only to later use that connection to exploit, guilt, or control you. It's not kindness, it's a transaction, and you're the product. The manipulator doesn't start with demands or pressure. They start by making you feel special. They compliment your intelligence, your work ethic, your strength. They offer to help you just because. They remember tiny details about you that make you feel seen. This attention feels like validation, and you welcome it. You let them in, often without realizing
Malo
how
botova,
fast
malo
they're
običnih
close,
igrača.
because it doesn't feel like manipulation.
3000
It feels
damage-a.
like finally being
Laganica.
appreciated. But beneath the surface, every gesture is strategic. Every compliment has a goal. Every favor plants a seed. You owe me. The manipulator is not giving, they're investing. And the return they expect is access, loyalty, influence. They make themselves indispensable to you so that when they eventually ask for something, your time, your silence, your compromise, you feel pressure to say yes. Refusing doesn't just feel awkward, it feels wrong, like a betrayal. Ingratiation thrives in
Idemo.
environments where people crave approval.
Print screen.
Workplaces, social circles, romantic beginnings, places where status
Print
and
screen.
acceptance matter. The manipulator mirrors your
Print
values,
screen.
echoes your language, plays the perfect friend, the ideal teammate, the supportive partner. But over time, the charm reveals its edge.
Samo
The
uzima.
compliments become conditional. The favors are followed by guilt trips. The warmth turns icy when you resist. What makes ingratiation so dangerous is how good it feels. At first, it targets your hunger to be seen, heard, and affirmed. It makes you feel lucky to have someone like them in your life. You never see the trap until you're already in it, because the person who once praised your independence now criticizes you for not needing anyone. The one who loved how strong you are now calls you cold when you set a boundary. Their admiration becomes a leash. It wasn't love, it was leverage. It wasn't generosity, it was groundwork. And the moment you stop serving their agenda, the flattery vanishes, and the real person, the one who was hiding behind all that praise, steps into the light. Emotional blackmail. Emotional blackmail is a psychological manipulation tactic that uses fear, guilt, and obligation to force you into compliance, not through direct threats, but through emotional pressure, so intense it feels like betrayal to resist. It's not about convincing you, it's about cornering you. The manipulator doesn't say, do this or else. They say, if you loved me, you would. Or, after everything I've done for you, how could you? And suddenly, saying no doesn't just feel like setting a boundary, it feels like destroying a relationship. This tactic is devastating because it uses your own emotions as the weapon. It takes your empathy, your loyalty, your compassion, and turns them against you. It forces you to choose between your needs and someone else's approval. And when you're being emotionally blackmailed, there is no right answer. Give in and you feel used. Push back and you're labeled selfish, cold, ungrateful. It often starts subtly. A partner might say, I guess I'll just be alone forever if you leave. A parent might sigh, I sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay me. A friend might warn, if you don't take my side, don't expect me to be around when you need someone. These aren't just statements, they're emotional traps. Say the wrong thing, and you're made to feel like a monster. You weren't forced, but you were emotionally cornered. What makes emotional blackmail so dangerous is its illusion of intimacy. It often comes from people you care about most, those who know exactly what buttons to press. They don't need to yell. They just imply what will happen if you don't obey. Withdrawal of love, affection, access, or stability. And because you fear losing that connection, you comply. Not because it's right, but because you're afraid. Over time, you begin to feel responsible for their moods, their pain, their happiness. You sacrifice your truth to preserve peace. You silence your instincts to avoid disappointment. And each time you give in, you reinforce the belief that their love is conditional and that your worth depends on keeping them satisfied. But real love doesn't require emotional ransom. Real love doesn't make you pay in guilt. Emotional blackmail does, and it does it with a smile. Feigning ignorance. Feigning ignorance is a psychological manipulation tactic where someone pretends not to know, understand, or remember something in order to avoid accountability, stall confrontation, or shift the emotional burden onto you. It's not genuine confusion, it's strategic amnesia. It's a way to play dumb while staying in control, and it leaves you exhausted, second-guessing, and doing all the emotional labor they refuse to touch. The manipulator knows exactly what they did. They remember the promise they made, the boundary they crossed, the thing they said that made your stomach drop. But when you bring it up, their face goes blank. They blink, they hesitate. Wait, what are you talking about? I don't remember saying that. That's not how I understood it. The moment you need clarity, they offer fog. This tactic is infuriating because it turns truth into a maze. You're left holding not just your own emotions, but now also the burden of having to explain reality to someone who's pretending not to grasp it. The more you try to pin down what happened, the more they squirm out of reach, using your rising frustration as proof that you're the unstable one. You become the overreactor, the accuser, the one who's making a big deal out of nothing. Feigning ignorance is especially cruel because it's passive. There's no yelling, no insults, just a shrug, a vacant look, a quiet refusal to meet you in the truth. And yet, the psychological impact is devastating. It makes you feel invisible, invalidated, like your experiences don't matter because someone can erase them just by pretending they never happened. It's often used in toxic relationships to avoid emotional responsibility. A partner forgets the agreement they made. A friend claims they didn't realize their comment was hurtful. A coworker suddenly misunderstood their role in a failed project. But they didn't forget. They just know that pretending to forget keeps you confused and them untouchable. What makes feigning ignorance so dangerous is its believability. You want to believe they're just clueless, that they're trying, that they're not being cruel. But deep down, you feel it, the tension, the coldness in their deflection, the way they look past you while you're begging for resolution. Because if they can convince you they don't know what they're doing, they never have to stop doing it. Preemptive invalidation. Preemptive invalidation is a psychological manipulation tactic where someone dismisses your thoughts, feelings, or boundaries before you've even expressed them, cutting you off at the root and making you doubt yourself before you ever speak. It's a form of control that cloaks itself in anticipation, not reaction. And it tells you one chilling thing: your truth will not be welcomed here. It sounds like, I already know what you're going to say. It's ridiculous. You're not going to start with your drama again, are you? You always blow things out of proportion. These statements are delivered before you've said a word, before you've had the chance to explain, question, or express. And that's the point. By assuming your emotional response and labeling it invalid before it happens, they silence you without ever needing to hear what's real. Preemptive invalidation is not just dismissal, it's psychological suffocation. It tells you, don't even try. Your thoughts are predictable, your feelings are wrong, your voice is unwelcome. And over time, you start to internalize that script. You hear their voice in your head before you speak. They're right. I'm overthinking. I should just drop it. So you do. And each time you do, a piece of you disappears. This tactic is often used by people who fear being challenged, those who want emotional control without having to navigate accountability. By pre-labeling your emotions as irrational, dramatic, or selfish, they create an emotional battlefield where only their feelings are allowed to exist. You're reduced to a caricature before you can defend yourself. You become the crazy one, the needy one, the overly emotional one, even if you haven't said a thing. What makes preemptive invalidation so vicious is that it erases your autonomy before you even use it. It conditions you to silence your instincts, to mistrust your perception, to bury your emotions deep enough that they no longer threaten the comfort of the manipulator. You start censoring yourself, not because you're wrong, but because you've been trained to believe no one wants to hear you, not even you. Cognitive load disruption. Cognitive load disruption is a psychological manipulation technique designed to overwhelm your mental processing so thoroughly that you can no longer think critically, make sound decisions, or recognize manipulation in real time. It works by flooding your mind with too many thoughts, demands, or stimuli at once, disorienting your ability to separate signal from noise. The goal isn't to persuade you with reason, it's to confuse you into compliance. This tactic preys on one of the most vulnerable parts of your mind, your limited cognitive bandwidth. Human brains can only process so much information at once before clarity gives way to chaos. Manipulators know this, so they create mental static, fast-paced talking, contradictory instructions, rapid emotional shifts, non-stop texting, guilt-tripping while problem-solving, layering tasks on top of tension. Before you can question what's happening, you're already buried under it. Cognitive load disruption often appears in abusive arguments where you're bombarded with accusations, justifications, and irrelevant distractions all at once. You try to address one issue, and suddenly 5 more are thrown at you. You're stuck defending yourself from things you didn't even say. Logic disappears. You lose track of the original point. Eventually, you shut down, not because you agree, but because your brain is tired of trying to keep up. It's also used in high-pressure sales tactics, cult indoctrination, and workplace exploitation. Overload the target with charts, statistics, deadlines, moral language, or fear-based messaging until their resistance drops. When someone is too overwhelmed to think clearly, they'll say yes just to end the pressure. And manipulators weaponize that exhaustion to push decisions you never would have made with a clear head. The scariest part is how easy it is to confuse this with passion, urgency, or even care. The manipulator might appear intense, emotionally invested, or even frantic, but behind the performance is control. If you're busy trying to untangle the emotional chaos they've created, you're not asking the right questions. You're not saying no. You're not walking away. And once you're drained, they offer relief on their terms. You're grateful for the break, the clarity, the quiet, but you didn't find peace. You were flooded into submission. You didn't choose. You were too overloaded to resist. And that's exactly how they win, by making sure your mind is too full to recognize you're already losing yourself. Comparative devaluation. Comparative devaluation is a covert but brutal manipulation tactic that diminishes your worth by constantly comparing you to others, real or imagined, in order to create insecurity, control, and emotional dependence. It doesn't attack you directly. Instead, it cuts you down sideways through praise of someone else. And the message it sends is clear. You are not enough. The manipulator might say things like, "Why can't you be more like her? He never complains the way you do. My ex would have handled this better. Other people seem to appreciate me more." They make these comparisons casually, like passing comments, but each one lands like a punch, targeted, deliberate, and meant to bruise. The purpose isn't to compliment the other person. The purpose is to make you feel inadequate, replaceable, or defective, because the more insecure you feel, the harder you'll work to be better. The more you'll seek their approval, and the more power they gain. This tactic rewires your emotional instincts. Instead of feeling loved, you start feeling compared. Every choice you make becomes a competition. Every interaction becomes a test. You're constantly measuring yourself against someone else's highlight reel, carefully selected by the manipulator to make you feel smaller. It creates a hunger for validation that only they can feed, and they control when or if they give it. Comparative devaluation is especially damaging because it attacks your core identity. It doesn't just say, you made a mistake, it says, you are less than. Over time, you begin to internalize these comparisons. You question your value, your desirability, your intelligence, your very place in someone's life. You start to see yourself through their distorted lens, and you start to believe it. And just when your self-esteem starts to crack, they might throw you a breadcrumb of praise, making you chase the high of finally being enough. But it never lasts, because the point of comparative devaluation is to keep you striving, not succeeding, to make you feel like you're always just behind whoever they've placed on a pedestal, even if that person doesn't exist. It's not admiration, it's emotional sabotage masked as feedback, and its purpose isn't to inspire growth, it's to keep you insecure enough to stay. Idealization, devaluation, discard cycle. The idealization, devaluation, discard cycle is a manipulative psychological pattern used by narcissists and emotional abusers to gain complete control over a person by systematically building them up, breaking them down, and then throwing them away. It's not a relationship, it's a strategy, and it's designed to keep you emotionally addicted while stripping you of your identity. It begins with idealization, the love bombing phase. You're flooded with affection, admiration, attention. They call you perfect. They mirror your dreams, your values, your words. You feel seen like never before. The connection is intense, fast, intoxicating. It feels like fate, but it's not love. It's a hook. They're studying you, figuring out what makes you feel alive so they can use it to make you feel dependent. Then comes devaluation, and it hits like a punch to the soul. The same person who once worshipped you begins to criticize you, subtly at first, then cruelly. They mock your flaws, dismiss your feelings, ignore your needs. They shift the energy without explanation. You're left chasing the version of them who once made you feel safe. You start working harder, giving more, apologizing for things you didn't do, anything to get back to how it was. But it's never the same, because the pedestal they put you on was never real. It was a stage for your fall. The more you try to reclaim their love, the more they withdraw, until one day they enter the final phase, discard. They ghost you, replace you, blame you, or even worse, pretend you never mattered at all. You're left hollow, questioning everything. Was any of it real? You comb through memories, texts, gestures, searching for proof that the beginning wasn't a lie, but they've already moved on, either to the next target or into a new mask of perfection. What makes this cycle so devastating is how it's tailored to your deepest desires, then weaponized against you. You weren't loved. You were used as a mirror to reflect their fantasy. And once you stopped serving that fantasy, once you needed something back, they shattered the illusion and made you feel like you were the problem all along. And the worst part? You still miss them. Not for who they were, but for who they pretended to be. Plausible deniability framing. Plausible deniability framing is a manipulation tactic where a person deliberately crafts their words, actions, or intentions in a vague, indirect, or ambiguous way, so that when they are called out, they can deny everything with a straight face. It's a psychological smokescreen. They act just close enough to the line to hurt, manipulate, or mislead you, but never so clearly that you can definitively prove it. And when you confront them, they flip the script. That's not what I meant. You're reading too much into it. I was just joking. This is gaslighting in a suit and tie, clean, calculated, and maddening. You know what they said, you felt what they did, but they've framed it just vaguely enough that any accusation sounds like your problem. You look like the one who's overanalyzing, being too sensitive, or jumping to conclusions. They stay calm, collected, untouchable, while your reality starts to unravel. That's the cruelty of this tactic. It leaves you trapped between what happened and what you can't prove. It forces you into silence, because every attempt to defend yourself makes you look unstable. And the more you question it, the more you start to question yourself. Maybe you did take it the wrong way. Maybe they really didn't mean it like that. Maybe you're the one turning nothing into something. But it's not nothing. It's precision cruelty, engineered to give them total control without ever owning a single consequence. This tactic is often used by narcissists, abusers, and manipulators who know the power of implication. They use facial expressions, tones, body language, and innocent wording to deliver emotional punches without leaving any fingerprints. It gives them the power to hurt you while still playing the victim or the saint. Plausible deniability isn't just a defense, it's part of the plan. They set the trap and stand just far enough away to claim they had nothing to do with it. And when you finally explode in frustration or pain, they'll step back, smile, and say, "Wow, I didn't realize you were so emotional." They get to win twice, once by wounding you, and again by making you doubt it ever happened. Truth sandwich technique. The truth sandwich technique is a deceptive manipulation tactic that disguises lies or harmful intentions between two layers of truth, making the falsehood easier to swallow and harder to detect. It's a psychological sleight of hand, mixing fact with fiction so seamlessly that the target internalizes the lie as truth simply because it feels true in context. It's not about convincing with logic, it's about disarming with structure. It works like this. The manipulator begins with a statement that's undeniably true, something you recognize and agree with. That's the first slice of truth. It builds rapport, earns trust, and sets the emotional tone. Then, nestled quietly in the middle, comes the distortion, the twist, the manipulation, the misinformation. By the time you realize it's there, you're already nodding along. And finally, they close with another piece of truth, a reassuring, familiar idea that reinforces everything they just said. That's the second slice. You're left with a full sandwich that feels credible, even if the center is rotten. Example, you know I've always supported your dreams. Truth, but lately your behavior has been selfish and ungrateful. Manipulation. Still, I care about you, and I just want what's best for us. Truth. That middle line hits harder because it's framed by warmth and familiarity. It doesn't feel like an attack, it feels like a caring observation, and so you believe it, or at least you stop defending yourself. The brilliance of this tactic lies in how it hijacks your emotional reasoning. When you're exposed to truth, your guard goes down. You stop scanning for danger. The lie slips in under your radar. And because it's sandwiched between things that feel safe and recognizable, your brain processes the entire message as trustworthy. In arguments, politics, relationships, and sales, manipulators use the truth sandwich to get you to accept something you would normally question. They exploit your pattern-seeking nature. If parts of what they're saying align with your memory or values, you instinctively give the rest a pass. What makes the truth sandwich so dangerous is its subtlety. You don't even realize you've eaten the lie until you're reacting to it, emotionally, behaviorally, relationally. You feel guilt, fear, or shame, and you don't even know why, because it didn't sound like manipulation. It sounded like someone who cares. Gaslight by proxy is a chilling and deeply manipulative extension of gaslighting, where the manipulator recruits other people, friends, family, co-workers, even therapists, to reinforce their distorted version of reality and make you doubt your own. Instead of only twisting your perception one-on-one, they enlist third parties to validate their lies, discredit your experiences, and isolate you emotionally. It's not just gaslighting, it's psychological warfare with backup. It starts when the manipulator frames the narrative before you even get a chance to speak. They go to others and say things like, "She's been acting really unstable lately," or "He twists everything I say." They don't come off as cruel, they play the concerned victim, they plant seeds, and by the time you start telling your side of the story, people already look at you through a distorted lens. You're not expressing yourself, you're proving them right. Suddenly, people you trusted are giving you strange looks. Friends are neutral. Family members are offering quiet concern as if you're fragile, confused, or emotional. You feel your reputation slipping, and worse, your reality being rewritten in front of you. And every time someone says, "Well, maybe they didn't mean it that way," or "They seemed really upset about how you treated them," a piece of your confidence dies. That's what gaslight by proxy does. It isolates you inside your own mind. You begin to doubt your memory, your emotions, your instincts. You stop speaking up because it seems no one will believe you anyway. And the manipulator, they sit at the center of it all, untouchable, admired even, because they've built a network that reflects their truth, not yours. What makes this tactic so devastating is the betrayal it brings. It's not just the manipulator causing harm, it's the people you thought were safe, the people who should defend you, believe you, see you, but instead, they echo the gaslighting, sometimes without knowing, sometimes with full awareness. Gaslight by proxy isn't about convincing you, it's about convincing everyone else so thoroughly that you start to feel like the crazy one in your own story. And when that happens, the silence isn't just forced, it becomes total. False flattery. False flattery is a manipulation tactic that uses insincere praise not to uplift you, but to control you. It's not about making you feel good, it's about making you vulnerable. At its core, false flattery is emotional bait. It's designed to feed your ego just enough to lower your defenses, to hook your need for validation, and to keep you seeking approval from someone who never meant a word of it. The manipulator doesn't flatter you because they admire you. They flatter you because they've studied you. They know what you want to hear. They've watched how you light up when praised, how your posture changes when someone acknowledges you. So they say exactly what you crave. "You're the smartest one here. No one does it like you. I wish everyone was as loyal as you." It sounds generous, thoughtful, kind, but it's a performance carefully crafted to make you pliable. What makes false flattery so dangerous is how quickly it creates emotional dependency. The praise triggers dopamine. It feels good. It affirms your worth. And you begin associating them with that feeling. So the next time they need something, a favor, silence, compliance, they don't have to argue or threaten. They just remind you how amazing you are, and you, eager to keep that praise flowing, start giving them what they want. It's especially effective on people who don't fully believe in their own value. If you're insecure, if you're exhausted, if you're healing from rejection, false flattery doesn't just sound nice, it feels necessary. You cling to it like proof that you're enough, and that's when it controls you. But the flattery is never consistent. That's part of the manipulation. One day you're brilliant, the next you're questioned. One moment you're the star, the next you're ignored. The emotional whiplash keeps you off balance and chasing their approval again. It's not about building your confidence, it's about owning it so they can take it away. You weren't being seen, you were being sized up. The compliments weren't gifts, they were tools, and once you're emotionally hooked, the very praise that made you feel powerful becomes the leash they use to keep you tame. Mimicry for rapport building up. Mimicry for rapport building is a psychological technique that uses subtle imitation to create a false sense of connection, trust, and emotional safety. It's the calculated act of mirroring someone's voice, gestures, energy,
E
interests, and even beliefs. Not
Da
Otkud
ima.
because
tebe?
you truly share
Otkud
them,
tebe?
but because you want them to
Evo stigao
believe
sam
you
kući,
do. It's
pešačio,
influence through reflection, where the manipulator
i mi se dalo
becomes
se
a
voz
human echo,
autobusom,
syncing with you so
pa izašao
perfectly that
u
your
centru
brain
Zemuna
begins to
i
register
pešačio
them
do kuće.
as
Znači,
familiar,
pešačio
likable, and safe.
na pola sata
This
sam ubio,
tactic is
brate.
incredibly effective because
Padaše
it
mi na noge.
exploits something deeply wired into our biology. We trust what feels like us. When
Pešačenje, brate.
someone matches our rhythm, when they speak at our pace, adopt our posture, or
Mogu
reflect
samo da
our
sedem i da igram
values,
tenkova.
it lights up a primal signal in the brain that says
Sad ću ga na tenku.
belonging. You don't even realize
Samo malo
what's happening.
izbrinem.
Samo
You just feel
polako, samo polako.
understood,
Napravi američki
seen,
account da možemo igrati
comfortable,
zajedno.
and that's when your guard drops. The manipulator knows this, so they study you.
Jesi, jesi.
If you're introverted, they soften their
Zoro,
tone.
pazi,
If
ako je
you
ping
use
tebi tamo
sarcasm,
120,
they start
više
doing
ti
it
američki
too.
server
If you
nego
like
ovaj,
certain
kako se
music,
zove,
hobbies, or ideas,
kazahstanski
they
server, mogu ti ja
suddenly
reći.
share those interests.
Kazahstanski, ne
You
znam
start
šta,
hearing
gdje
things
god da
like,
je,
I've never told anyone this
144
before either.
FPS-a ima, pa
Or,
ti vidi.
it's crazy how alike
Ovog
we
bre
are.
pinga.
You feel
Čime
like
ne
you found a
FPS-a, pinga.
soulmate, a best friend,
I evo
a
te ja
missing
rekao.
piece. But it's not a bond. It's a performance. Mimicry for rapport building
Ovi što
isn't
su se
about
zajebali pa
genuine
prešli sa
connection.
ruskog
It's
servera na
about
evropski.
trust acquisition. The goal is to create
Jebi
alignment
ga.
Far Gaming
so that
ubedio
you'll
da će...
open up,
To je
attach
Far Gaming
faster, and
ubedio
become
ovaj da će
easier
da
to
im se obriše
manipulate
account.
later. It's
Da.
common in sales, seduction, cult recruitment, and
Ma debalan,
toxic
bolje je da se obriše
relationships.
account,
The
prestaneš
mirroring is
imati
so
ikakve
well
veze sa
executed
njima.
that by the time the mask slips, you're already
A
emotionally
poslije su
invested.
dali left.
And when they inevitably change, when they stop
Dobro,
reflecting
prikupili su
you
ti
and
štetni, ti su
reveal
prikupili
a
naroda,
colder,
pa ti vidi.
more controlling version of themselves, you
Poslije su
feel
onda dali left.
confused, even
Ja.
Lesta je
betrayed.
poslije imala
But
isto
part of
neki
you
ugovor
still
koliko ne
holds
smije
on
valjda da
because
menja.
you remember
I
that
poslije isto
early
pola godine do
connection,
godinu
that
počka da
sense
menja.
of being so
Odmah
understood.
BZ linija
What
ona
you
nova
don't
s onim
realize is
derpoljama,
that
druže.
version
Ja
of them
kažem, to
never
nikad neću.
existed. It was you,
Kako ste već bacili
reflected
jedan
back at you
76,
to
bacili
gain
cijelo tek 3,
access to
jebemo
your
mater.
trust.
Da.
That's the danger
Ti
of
niko neće
mimicry.
reći
It doesn't
BZ
feel like manipulation.
OP.
It
Ela
feels
linija
like
onda nek
home
bude OP, ja u
until
pičku
it
matri.
turns into a trap.
Bah.
Jealousy, induction. Jealousy, induction is a psychological manipulation tactic where someone deliberately
Ovo
provokes
tako radi,
feelings
napraviš
of
onda
jealousy in
idu sa
you
tim
to gain
derpuljama.
power, provoke insecurity, or manipulate your behavior. It's not accidental, it's engineered, and it hits right where it hurts. Your self-worth, your trust,
Čekaj da vidim
your sense of safety
statistiku iz
in
kreveta
a
od ovoga
relationship.
Šigarua.
The manipulator
Ja,
doesn't
majko
create
mila.
connection
Iz
through
kreveta?
honesty or affection. They
Joj,
create
da odmorim.
obsession through
A daj iz
emotional
kreveta, sad će da uključim na
Aha.
telefonu.
At first, it may seem subtle.
A, onda u
They
redu.
talk about someone else a little too often. They mention an ex, compliment a stranger, or flirt in front of you, and then deny it with a smirk. You're overreacting. I was just being friendly. But deep down, you feel it. The tightening in your chest, the drop in your stomach, the quiet war between your pride and your panic. That's not an accident. That's the point. Jealousy induction is about shifting the power
Vidi ga
dynamic.
277
Nemoj mi.
mm prva
Manipulator
granata.
sees you growing comfortable,
277
secure,
prva
or
granata na
emotionally
medium tank.
grounded.
Ujebote,
They
baš su da reći.
destabilize you with doubt. Suddenly,
Medium.
you're not sure
Čekaj, o
where
čem
you stand.
pričaš ti? Onaj
You
lovac
question
novi
your
ili šta?
attractiveness, your importance,
Da, a
your
Šigaru,
place in their life.
277
And while you're
mm AP,
spiraling,
pa ti
you
vidi.
sit back and watch,
Ujebote.
calm, in control, feeding off your reaction. Because your jealousy isn't a
332
problem for them. It's a signal that
APCR.
you care, that they've got you
Dvojka.
wrapped around them. This tactic is especially cruel because
A na
it makes
300
you feel
metara
like
spada
a
sa
problem.
332 na
When you confront
313.
them,
E,
they
to
accuse
se
you of
zove
being
posao.
jealous,
E, to se zove
needy,
posao.
or
To se
insecure.
zove najnoviji
You feel
tank koji je
ashamed for
najjači.
having emotions they deliberately triggered.
A nije na
You start
Skorpiju.
competing with ghosts, exes,
Sa
coworkers,
311 na
and names that casually
250,
drop
jeli?
just to get a reaction. And every time you try to
I
set a
šta ja da sa
boundary, they
250 da
twist it
probijem,
into a
jebote.
weakness. I can't even talk to
Bolje ti
other
obično
people now.
pucati.
Over time, jealousy induction doesn't just
Obično je
make your hair go
258 i AP manje pada na daljinu,
You
kako
start
se
working
zove,
harder to
nego
impress
to.
them. You lose sleep
Da.
wondering if you're enough.
Jebote.
You
Jedino
overgive,
zbog shell velocity, ajde, to je jedna jedina stvar da
hoping
će
that
se
if you
puca
just
gol.
do more,
To
Znači,
jedino ti,
na
to jedino
prvo-
ti voliš.
replaceable. But that's the darkest truth. They
Pa
don't
šta,
want
kad
the
imam
jealousy to
1000,
stop.
ovdje imam
They want to
1400.
control you through it. They
No
don't want
koliko
to
je
make
već?
you for someone else. They just need you to believe they might. And in that fear, you give them everything. while slowly losing yourself.
A 500 granat ili do 544 velocity. Pomire.
Mimicry for rapport building is a psychological technique that uses subtle imitation to create a false sense of connection, trust, and emotional safety. It's the calculated act of mirroring someone's voice, gestures, energy, interests,
A
and
i
even
ovo je
beliefs.
sreće moje,
Not because you
znači,
truly
blokirao
share
sam
it,
ja.
but because you
250.
want them to believe you do. It's
Aj.
influence through reflection,
Sad
where the
blokirao.
manipulator
Glavom, a?
becomes a
Ma
human
jabola,
actor,
na 6 helta
syncing with you so
blokirao
perfectly
sam
that
Chaffeja,
your brain begins to
120,
register them as
115.
familiar, likable, and safe. This tactic is incredibly effective because it
Au,
Ja
exploits
250.
something deeply
Ja
wired into
254
our
velocity na AP-u, pa
We
to još
trust
i
what
obično.
feels
Onda
like
još imam
us.
ja one skillove,
When
hoću da se
someone
poboljšam.
matches our rhythm, when they speak at our pace, adopt our posture, or reflect our values, it lights up a primal signal in the brain that says,
Me neko jebe da ima disperziju
you don't even
0.22.
realize it's happening. You just feel understood, seen, comfortable, and that's when
Jebote,
the
hoće
guard
biti preciznije od
drops.
Leopardovih
The
grileta, svoj
manipulator
kurac.
knows this, so they study you. If you're introverted, they soften their tone. If you use sarcasm, they start doing it too.
Opa,
If you like
ovaj
certain
put nisam
music,
preživio.
hobbies, or ideas, they suddenly share those interests. You start hearing things like, I've never told anyone this before either, or it's crazy how alike we are. You feel like you found a soulmate, a best friend, a missing piece, but it's not a bond, it's a performance. Mimicry for rapport building isn't about genuine connection. It's about trust acquisition. The goal is to create alignment so that you'll open up, attach faster, and become easier to manipulate later. It's common in sales, seduction, cult recruitment, and toxic relationships. The mirroring is so well executed that by the time the mask slips, you're already emotionally invested. And when they inevitably change, when they stop reflecting you and reveal a colder, more controlling version of themselves, you feel confused, even betrayed, but part of you still holds on because you remember that early connection, that sense of being so understood. What you don't realize is that version of them never existed. It was you, reflected back at you, to gain access to your trust. That's the danger of mimicry. It doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like home, until it turns into a trap. 4.0. You said, weaponized incompetence. ChatGPT said, weaponized incompetence. Weaponized incompetence is a manipulation tactic where someone deliberately pretends to be bad at something or exaggerates their inability to do it so that you'll take over the task, relieve them of responsibility, and lower your expectations permanently. It's not a lack of skill, it's a lack of effort disguised as helplessness, and it's used to shift emotional and physical labor onto you without ever having to ask. It begins innocently enough. They can't load the dishwasher the right way. They don't know how to pay a bill online. They forget how to schedule a doctor's appointment or say they're just not good at talking about emotions. And when you try to guide them, they fumble, sigh, act confused, or make such a mess of it that it's easier and less frustrating for you to just do it yourself. That's the trap. You become the fixer, the emotional manager, the default adult in the relationship, and they get to sit back and play dumb.
Pita me
But
pilot
here's the
jedna sinoć
truth.
kako se
No
zove.
one is that bad
Za
at
ovu
everything
franšizu
by
Star
accident.
Wars nikad nije gledala,
Weaponized
razmišlja da li da
incompetence is
počne
a
da gleda.
strategy. It's
Aha,
A
learned
ja
jesam
sve
zvao.
to
helplessness
odgledao.
turned into power.
To,
Because the
dolazimo do
moment
tog
you lower
dela.
the bar for them,
Mislim se,
they've
budem,
won. They never have to
budem
meet
li
it
sad ja
again.
morao da
You
gledam
stop asking.
Star
You
Wars, to
stop
neće biti
expecting.
Star
And
Wars nego
slowly,
Čmar
the
Wars.
burden becomes yours
Sad te
to
boli briga,
carry
bro.
alone.
I treba
What
tako
makes this
prijaviti.
tactic
I?
so insidious is how
Pa
unthreatening it
nisam, evo te
appears.
našao me
They
u
don't
ponoć,
argue.
brate, ja sam
They
još me
don't
nekako
yell.
naterao
They
da
just
legnem
can't. So
u
if you
10
get
do ponoć,
frustrated,
a ono
you
krenut
look
te poruke
unreasonable. If
u
you
ponoć.
demand more, you
Do
seem
jedan i
to
baš.
nešto
brag.
sam,
They maintain control of the
Pa što je-
baš je
dynamic by
naša
making you
kačija.
feel like you
Pa
have all the
trebao si
control.
pozvati na
But it's
film.
not control, it's weight, unshared, unreciprocated, and silently
I meku.
resented. This behavior thrives in
Pa
relationships.
šta se smiješ, Bog te
Romantic,
mazo, šta je
familial,
smiješno tu?
professional. where one person is already more emotionally responsible. And over time, it doesn't just create imbalance, it creates burnout. You feel
Ne kontam šta je
unappreciated,
tu smiješno
invisible, and
znači.
exhausted. Meanwhile, they continue to fail
Gdje mi
upward,
reći šta je smiješno
smiling,
znači? Šta je
shrugging,
smiješno?
and
Pa je,
saying,
tebe je
"You're
tražilo da
just
gledate
better at
film
it than me."
zajedno.
But that's not praise. That's the
Ne,
plan.
on se raspitivala,
Because if they're
nije još.
bad at it long
Ali
enough,
ja rekao
you'll stop
da
expecting
rado da
them to
pogleda
try at all.
svojim
Da.
Framing with
redosledom.
false urgency.
Evo sad
Framing
izlazi
with
jedan
false
Star Wars.
urgency is a
Sad ne znam
high-pressure
izađe film. Izlazi
psychological
film, sad ne znam da li ide prvo u
manipulation tactic
bioskop ili
that
ide
forces you into
direktno na ovaj
rushed decisions
Disney
by
Plus.
creating an artificial sense of time-sensitive consequence. It doesn't rely on facts. It relies on fear. The manipulator distorts the moment to feel like now is your only chance, knowing that when panic takes over, reason disappears. You're not being asked to decide. You're being pushed to react. It often comes cloaked in concern or opportunity. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. If you don't act now, it'll be too late. We don't have time to talk it through. You just have to trust me.
Jao, ja.
These phrases aren't information. They're psychological throttles. They accelerate your decision-making process past the speed of logic and straight into emotional chaos. This tactic is used in abusive relationships to push boundaries, sexually, financially, emotionally. It's used in sales to manipulate buyers into saying yes before reading the fine print. It's used by cult leaders, shady employers, and manipulative partners who want control without giving you time to think. The clock is always ticking, and that ticking is the trap. What makes this technique so dangerous is that it doesn't feel like coercion. It feels like urgency. Your brain interprets it as a moment of importance. It goes into fight or flight mode, looking for the fastest exit from discomfort. So, you agree, you comply, you say yes just to escape the pressure, but what you're really escaping is clarity, because the manipulator knows that if you had even a few minutes to think, you might choose differently. Once you comply, they often back off. The urgency fades like it never existed, and that's when the shame sets in. You realize you were rushed, manipulated, cornered, but by then, you've already signed the paper, crossed the line, or made the promise, and they're counting on you to stay quiet, too embarrassed or confused to push back. Framing with false urgency works because it hijacks your ability to pause. It punishes hesitation. It disguises pressure as importance and stress as necessity. And the more overwhelmed you feel, the more likely you are to hand over your power, just to stop the noise, just to feel safe again, even if it means sacrificing what truly matters. Deceptive framing. Deceptive framing is a manipulation tactic that controls perception by carefully twisting how information is presented rather than what is actually said. It doesn't rely on lies. It relies on selective truths, loaded language, and psychological spin to make something harmful seem harmless or even virtuous. It's not about what you see. It's about making sure you see it through their lens. This tactic is subtle, powerful, and disturbingly common. A manipulator doesn't say, "I ignored your needs." They say, "I gave you space because I didn't want to smother you." They don't say, "I broke your trust." They say, "I made a mistake because I care so much. I got scared." They take an action that should provoke anger or doubt and dress it in words that provoke sympathy or guilt.
Lebe,
The
dragi.
brilliance and danger of deceptive framing is that it gives the manipulator moral high ground. They become the victim, the martyr, the rational one. You feel foolish for being upset, selfish for demanding more,
Šta kažeš,
confused
pravite
about what
američki
really
account.
happened. Your gut knows something's wrong. But
Ne
their
mogu ni na
version
ovaj da
sounds
odigram.
so
Sinoć sam
reasonable,
došao,
so
sam
logical,
5-6
so wrapped in
bitaka,
noble intent that you start to
popizdeo
question
i
your own
izašao.
instincts. They twist context to serve their
A
agenda.
znaš šta je?
They
Igrao sam
emphasize
onu
what
9
benefits
Aresa,
them
ne bi li
and
me uzao prvo
conveniently
Martisa,
leave
razumeš?
out what
Dobro.
doesn't.
I
They don't deny
jer
facts.
svaki
They
put kad
reshape the
podigram
narrative so
partiju,
the facts
partija
fit
je
Dobro.
toliko
and
loše
once they've controlled the
da
narrative,
Markica
they
tih
control your response. You may even end up
54% stalno
defending
je
them,
Ono je
because you've
trenutno
been
u
fed
opadu,
a
sad imam trenutno
version of
53 koma
reality
nešto. Sad
where
ako
your
uđem u
hurt
bitku,
doesn't
pa ću na
make sense.
52, pa ću da
In toxic
povećam, ali nebitno.
relationships,
I
Dobro.
deceptive
svaku
framing
tu
is used to
lošu partiju,
justify emotional neglect, cheating,
u momentu kad
control,
ja
even
igram,
abuse. I only check your messages
gubimo.
because I
Znači,
care
gubimo.
about our trust.
Ja?
Pa ne,
I
ra-
raise
ne-
my voice because
I
you
na
don't
kraju
listen unless
ispade
I do.
nekako pobjeda. A ja
I'm
neću da
not
trošim puta
controlling you,
5,
just make
razumiješ, na
reckless choices.
ten kako sam
Every
izučio.
word is
Zato
designed
ti,
to
zato ti
redirect
kažem,
your
automa-
ako
light
znači
away from
onaj,
them and onto
nećeš da
me.
trošiš puta 5 na svom nalogu, uzmeš drugi nalog pa igraš sa njim.
Pa trošim ja na ovu 10 pares.
Aha,
Neću
dobro.
9, sad ću dođem u te. Pa imam puta 5, pa onda... Ostalo mi još koliko, sad ću ti kažem. Sad ću ja to da potrošim. Ajde, očitavaj, jel mi očitavaš? Je, očitavaj, samo očitavaj.
Psychological manipulation technique that weaponizes generosity to create invisible chains of guilt, pressure,
Misije.
and control.
Pa da izlučim bre 11 ovu i onda da izlučim poljske modifikacije na 10 i da izlučim 11 ovu.
Help, a gift. We feel
I ne znam bre,
compelled to give
PZT.
something back. But manipulators twist this instinct into a trap. Their generosity isn't a gift, it's bait. It starts with an
On
unsolicited
meni neće
favor.
sad otvori ove
They go
misije.
out of their
To je
way to
način,
help
ali
you.
nešto
They
blokira.
buy you something
znam ja.
expensive. They defend you in front of others. They show up at
Koliko
just the right
klikćem,
moment and
145
say
komada
the
ostalo.
words
Dobro,
you
145
desperately need to
prošlo
hear.
reaktiranje
And
danas.
you feel grateful, seen,
2 hira
You tell yourself,
11 i
this
poljske
is someone I can
modifikacije,
trust.
taman.
But then, slowly, the true cost of that kindness begins to surface. They ask for something in return, your time, your silence, your loyalty, your body. And if you hesitate, the guilt
Sad
hits
ne
like
dođe
a
na
freight
kompjuter i
train.
stići kam im
After
pogrešan dugo.
everything I've done for you,
Nah.
wow, I guess I shouldn't have bothered. You're just like everyone else, ungrateful. Suddenly, you're not dealing with a request. You're facing a debt you never agreed to, but now feel obligated to repay. This tactic works because it makes you feel morally trapped. Saying no doesn't feel like a boundary. It feels like a betrayal. So you compromise, you give in, you justify things you wouldn't normally accept just to stay even. But the scales never balance, because that was never the point. Every favor they give is calculated. Every kindness is a currency designed to put you in their emotional pocket. In relationships, this becomes a form of emotional blackmail. You stay longer than you should, tolerate more than you can bear, because you feel like you owe them your loyalty, your forgiveness, your silence. But you don't, because real giving doesn't demand repayment. Real kindness doesn't come with a hook. Manipulators count on you being too kind to walk away. They build the illusion of connection by giving you something valuable, only to use it as a leash. And the more generous they appear, the harder it is to admit you've been caught. But make no mistake, you weren't loved. You were bought. And every time you try to take your freedom back, they'll remind you just how much they gave, so you remember how much you're supposed to owe. Triadic closure manipulation. Triadic closure manipulation is a psychological technique where the manipulator strategically creates or leverages connections between people, usually you and a third party, to control narratives, build alliances, and quietly isolate or influence you. It's based on a powerful principle in social psychology.
No, don't stop.
If person A is close to person B and person B is close to person C, then A and C are more likely to develop trust between them. The manipulator weaponizes that trust triangle to gain emotional leverage over everyone inside it. At first, it seems harmless, even positive. The manipulator encourages closeness. You two would get along great. Let me introduce you to someone who really understands me. You'll love them. They position themselves at the center of the triangle, the connector, the bridge. But what you don't realize is that they are carefully controlling what each person knows about the other. They plant seeds. Just a heads up, she can be emotional sometimes. Don't take what he says too seriously. He has a weird sense of humor. You enter the new connection already biased, already softened to manipulation without knowing it. Then, the real manipulation begins. They use the triangle to distort perception, influence opinions, and triangulate blame. If you confront them on a lie, they'll say, well, Even person C agrees with me. If you question their loyalty, they'll reply, I told them everything. We're all on the same page. Now you're not just dealing with the manipulator, you're defending yourself against a dynamic that's been engineered to box you in. It's especially devastating when used in romantic or friend groups. You feel like you're being ganged up on, even if no one is directly attacking you. You second-guess your instincts because someone else always seems to be siding with them. You feel crazy, paranoid, alone. But what you're feeling is not paranoia. It's social manipulation done by someone who understands that alliances aren't built with honesty, but with carefully placed distortions. Triadic closure manipulation turns trust into a trap. It turns connection into control. And by the time you realize that the triangle wasn't built to include you, but to contain you, you've already stopped speaking freely, stopped trusting yourself, and started questioning who's really on your side. Halo effect Halo effect exploitation is a psychological manipulation tactic that uses your positive perception of one trait, like beauty, charisma, intelligence, or success, to blind you to red flags in every other area. The manipulator doesn't change who they are. They just shine one part of themselves so brightly that you never think to question the shadows hiding behind it. It's not seduction, it's misdirection, and it works because your brain wants to believe in consistency. The halo effect is a cognitive bias where one positive trait creates an unconscious assumption that everything else about a person must also be good. If someone is attractive, we assume they're kind. If they're charming, we assume they're honest. If they're successful, we assume they're emotionally stable. But manipulators know how to weaponize that bias. They polish the part of themselves that dazzles, then hide their darker traits behind it. They might dress impeccably, speak with confidence, and make others laugh effortlessly. They may appear generous in public, loving in early stages, or deeply intelligent in conversation. These traits make you feel safe, special, lucky. And because your mind fills in the blanks, you stop looking closely. You make excuses for their coldness, their cruelty, their control. You explain it away. They're just stressed. They didn't mean it. That's not who they really are. But it is. You just can't see it clearly because the halo is in your eyes now. This form of manipulation is especially dangerous because it's not overt. It doesn't scream abuse. It whispers charm. It's the CEO who leads with vision but abuses power behind closed doors. The romantic partner who makes you feel adored in public but emotionally withholds in private. The perfect friend who quietly competes with or undermines you. You trust them because they shine, but that shine isn't truth, it's armor. And the moment you begin to question it, when you finally start pointing out inconsistencies or setting boundaries, you're met with disbelief, not just from them, but from others, because they've exploited the halo effect so well that people see their brilliance, not their damage. You're not just fighting their manipulation, you're fighting the illusion they built, and the world is already on their side. Desensitization by gradual exposure. Desensitization by gradual exposure is a psychological manipulation tactic that conditions you to accept unacceptable behavior, not all at once, but in tiny, almost imperceptible steps. It's the slow erosion of your boundaries through repeated, low-level violations that escalate over time, until the things that once shocked you now feel
baš kad ti dođeš ja odo, znači ja sam već 2 sahata tu bio. Znači sad sam 2 sahata bio, ne sahat.
A dobro, taman. Oko 5 možda opet, nemam pojma ako neki dropovi budu, vidim tamo kod ovog Piki Baby piše dropovi kao 16.
Aha.
Ali mislim da ništa toga.
Možda neki drugi.
Pa samo upalim pa vidim za pola sata ako nema ništa, gasim. Tada ga gledam koji ću da ga slušam i onako ne mogu da ići.
Samo tad dođeš da vidiš šta je, gdje, kako je i onda.
Ne mogu im sebe da slušam, kamo li njih da slušam.
Ja.
Your nervous system, which once sounded alarm bells, starts going quiet. You get used to the
Ako ja
tension,
stavim na
the
mute,
discomfort, the
pa nek
emotional
priča koliko
shifts.
hoćeš.
You start telling
Sada ga ja
yourself,
ne slušam.
it's not that bad. You adjust. You lower your expectations. You convince yourself you're being mature, understanding,
Znači ti
patient,
dođeš
when in
ovdje, on
reality,
dođe
you're
ovdje,
being
ovaj
conditioned.
tvoj dođe ovdje i ti
I
napraviš
svi dođu
Knows
tu negdje.
exactly what they're doing.
5000
If
napraviš,
they came
jeste,
at
ali
you
kurs
with
on
full
dođe,
force,
moj mene izgura s te
cruelty
pozicije.
from day one,
Kaže, to je
you
moja
run.
pozicija.
But by
Meni tati i
introducing
mama
harm
kupili tu
slowly,
poziciju.
they train you to tolerate it. They reset your baseline for what feels normal in a relationship, and by the time things become outright toxic, you've already been emotionally numb.
Da vidimo,
Your
da li možemo
instincts are
pogoditi
dulled,
toga
your
lefa i
tolerance is
završiti
high,
sa njim,
your
Bog
fight
te
response
mazo.
has been replaced with silence. This tactic is used in abusive relationships,
7
cults,
ispaljenih granata, ovo,
authoritarian
Vinhunda
systems,
njenu nisam
even in
penetrirao, sve je
toxic
bilo zeleno.
workplaces. It
Sve je bilo
works because
zeleno,
it
a
doesn't
uspio se
feel like
nekako da ga ne
brainwashing.
probim.
It feels like adaptation. You
To je
believe
uspjeh,
you're
ja,
handling
da,
things
kažem.
well,
Yes.
that you're strong enough to stay calm, that
sad
your
ga neko drugi
empathy is
nabija.
making a difference, but really, you're being rewired to accept the unacceptable 1 inch at a
To sam
time.
ovog.
And the scariest part, you often don't realize how far you've gone until someone on the outside says, "Wait, how are you okay with this?" That moment doesn't feel like truth. It feels like waking up in a house that's already on fire. Mirroring vulnerabilities. Mirroring vulnerabilities is a highly manipulative psychological tactic where someone pretends to share your deepest
Time
fears,
is money.
wounds, or emotional scars, not to connect, but to control. It's not real intimacy. It's an emotional illusion crafted
On je
to
to i on
build
mene
trust
spota
quickly,
mamicom.
lower your
Ja reći,
defenses, and make you feel seen in a way that feels profound, but is entirely
Otkako-
fabricated. It's
dok
not
sam
shared
grindao ovog
pain,
tenka na
it's
tier
stolen
10,
pain.
nikad
It
me
begins
nisu
with you
zapalili, a
opening
imao
up.
sam hranu.
You tell them
A
Dobro.
od
something
kako sam
raw,
počeo da
maybe
grindam markicu
about
na
a
ovom tenku, imam
childhood
hranu,
trauma,
redovno me
a
pali. Samo da gubim
betrayal,
markicu.
a personal
Nevjerovatno.
insecurity.
Baš
Most
da
people
si ti
would
mislio,
listen
baš
with
da si ti
empathy,
mislio.
but a manipulator
Onog
sees
momenta kad sam sebi
opportunity.
zacrtao tu
Moments
markicu,
later,
znači,
or even instantly,
Ja.
they mirror it back. That's
evo i
crazy.
sad su mi došli s
I went
leđa,
through the
pustili su
exact
jednu
same
stranu i
thing.
nabili su me,
They
svi me
match your
nabili.
tone.
Ja.
They echo your language.
I
They mimic
zapališe.
your emotional energy like a reflection. And in that moment,
Pa gdje si
you
ti?
feel connected, like you found someone who gets you. But they don't. They're not
Ništa
revealing
pametno, kod
themselves.
tebe.
They're studying you.
Ma,
Every
isto
vulnerability
šuta, da
you
vidim šta
expose
ima.
becomes a
Šta
script
ću ulazit u
for
vod da
them to
vidiš šta
perform.
ima?
And every time they mirror one of your wounds, you bond
Neću ništa
deeper.
igrati, došao
Because
sam
it
sam da
doesn't
prvim
feel
šta se
like
dešava.
manipulation.
Ništa
Slušam
pametno.
It feels
cigaru
like
u
fate,
6
like
sati.
you're not